This episode is brought to you by Absolute Landscapes. Absolute Landscapes is a landscape maintenance company that focuses heavily on commercial property maintenance. Call today for information about the services we provide and how we can best help you. 803-427-5944. That kind of thing. But yeah, if you want to introduce yourself, and then maybe we kind of go from there.
Yeah, I am Angela. That's always a fun point of discussion that I always struggle with is like I introduce myself different ways all the time, which is me being my Gemini self, right? Professionally, Angela Lundy. I'm a podcaster. I've been studying astrology, human design, and gene keys for, I would say, off and on 7 really good years, but astrology has always kind of cropped up for me. It's very interesting because I'm a very left-brained logic person in a lot of ways. And then I also have this well, now I know Uranus, Mercury, I can't not think of things in a unique way. And so I was always kind of struggling with how does the world really work? What is really the mysteries of the world and why are we here? I remember as a little kid thinking like, why the heck are we here? Like, and even we discussed it a little bit. I was kind of a weird kid that remembered what other people perceived as past lives, telling my mom I remembered her when she was my sister. I was an incredibly shy kid, like terrified of other adults and things, and I would crawl up into my grandpa's lap that had all these tattoos, and he had this really like deep voice, and all the kids were scared of him, but I would crawl up in his lap every time I saw him, and my mom asked me why, and I was like, I remember him before he died. And she's like, he's not dead. And I was like, and I would just do this. And then I, of course, forgot and, went off to the world of really wanting to be a high achiever. I wanted to be either a doctor or a lawyer or something like that. And then as I grew, I was really good at cooking. And I thought maybe I'd be on, Food Network and all of these things. I was so passionate about it. And I just never could find exactly what I wanted. I ended up dropping out of art school and going and working for Wells Fargo. And I was just like, what am I doing here? Listening to Tony Robbins every single day going, what am I doing? Like, I just could not figure it out. I got fired out of nowhere for no reason. It was a blessing, of course. And I started looking for another job and I was like, I can't sit at a desk. I can't do this. And I saw this cook for the president and joined the Navy on a whim. And they put me into weather forecasting school, which you learn to forecast the weather in like a 4-year degree in 8 months. It's very grueling school. It did teach me how to study because I never knew how to study. I would always just easily pass classes, but I had to like actually study. And very interesting. I'm now an astrologer and reading, like these weather forecasting radar and the charts. And all you're really doing is looking at upstream data all the time and you're projecting from that. And now I'm like, oh, that was a really good crash course on how to read charts, right? So it's really interesting how things happen seemingly not connected. And you're like, how did I end up here? I'm a very mutable person. So in astrology, we have very fixed people that don't change they don't like change. They don't change very much. We have these cardinal people. You're very cardinal, right? It's like, let's go. Let's not even think about it. Let's just go. And then we have mutable, which has a little go and a little like, where's my fixed people to keep me from going all over the place? And so I have a lot of mutable. And so it was always like, where am I going? Right. And so I end up in the military. I made some really amazing friends. I got to travel to Korea and, Hawaii. And I had both my children in Hawaii. But I got out and I was like, what the heck am I doing? And I kind of had like I was just struggling because I was so off course. I really thought I was going to find the right answer in diet. I was struggling with my health after being in the military and having kids. I could not get it together. I was like, I've done vegan and vegetarian and paleo and AIP, and I'm listening to biohackers all day, and I'm doing all the things, the cold plunges, the saunas, I'm doing everything right. And I just couldn't get my health in order. And I finally had to kind of give up on that life of thinking I was going to have the perfect body and the perfect, the perfect everything. And I was going to go out and teach people how to do it, right? I was going to have the right answer. And so I kind of stumbled upon, I went for transpersonal psychology, like a master's program with my best friend who stumbled upon this program. And it teaches you a lot about meditation and purpose and dream work. And you learn about human design and the Enneagram and all of these different things. And that's what really got me started on this kind of new path. And I really got obsessed with human design and trained in it. And then I needed just a little bit more. And that's when I found astrology, which human design is kind of like the what do we do with this vehicle, this body, how do we use it in the most optimal way? And then astrology gives you a really beautiful map and understanding of why we act the way we do. And timing is just, it's so incredible. I love studying Stephen Pressfield. He was writing and writing and writing and writing. He didn't sell his first novel until he was 52 years old. 52 years old. And he'd been writing since he was 20, full time. I'm doing it. He wrote the book, War of Art, about how to be a professional creative, how to not give up. And it was just so interesting looking at his chart and seeing the timing of that first book at 52 was in his chart, and that ability to not give up, and the reason that he's here to show us how to not give up on our art or give up on ourselves. It just captivates me. I mean, I always have loved psychology, and I love understanding how people tick and why they do the things they do, and why the heck I am the, kind of crazy creature I am with this left brain logic and this whole other, side of looking at things in a very different way. And so it helped me, and now it's helping so many more people. And I love that I get to do kind of my purposeful job sharing this and letting people understand themselves a lot better.
Okay. So I just want to say one thing. Do you go by Angie? Is that what you go by?
It is such a, I do usually go by Angie, but whenever I introduce myself professionally, I always say Angela Lundy. And so it's always such a confusing thing. So you can choose.
Well, I was actually gonna say, and this is a terrible pun. I told you this, but this is a terrible pun. The stars are aligning for this because my sister's name is Angie, and she actually, I actually called her yesterday to try to figure out exactly what time I was born. We couldn't narrow down the exact time, but yeah, so that's crazy. That's really crazy. But yeah, okay. So human design. I've never heard of this. I've probably heard it, but I don't know really what it is. But I'm glad that we're kind of pushing this in this direction about understanding, using astrology and human design to better understand yourself. Because unfortunately, it seems like astrology for a lot of people is just an excuse to I don't know, run over a curb or something when they're driving their car. I mean, you know what I mean? It's like, oh, I'm an XYZ, so this is what I do. But it's got to be deeper than that. You know what I mean? There's got to be more to it. So I love that that the way you look at this is try to better understand yourself and how you operate and why you think and do the things that you do. And that's kind of my whole goal here with this conversation, is so that we could figure out these things about ourselves and then use that to better understand ourselves, which of course will help improve our lives. So human design, what is that? Because I don't know really anything about it. I know roughly astrology, but I've never heard of the human design part.
Yeah, so human design is actually uses the planetary system. So you still put your birth date in there. And anybody that is a little bit skeptical about birth date, birth time, I mean, I can know my son just got his first girlfriend, and I was like, what's her birthday? I can understand somebody so well just from their birthday. Now, I wouldn't give a reading without the time because there's so many nuances that I need for that. But it's just mind blowing, right? Like my son calls me a witch. He's like, "Oh, is that witchy stuff, Mom?" And I'm like, "What?" He's like, he's so surprised by the things that I know about people. But it's just so it blows my mind every time. Like literally every time I give a reading and somebody tells me like, I've never even said this to somebody. That's exactly how I think, or that's exactly how I feel inside, or that's exactly why I do the things I do. It blows me away every time. I'm surprised every time, but it does work, right? And when we think about the patterns and all of the things that are, that work because the sun is exactly the right distance from the earth, right?
Mm-hmm.
Any closer and we'd burn up, any further and we'd freeze. Gravity works exactly, it's precisely what we need. The fact that we're having an eclipse because the moon is exactly, I think like 400 times smaller than the sun. And so the exact right distance makes it perfectly, block out the sun. People have been using the lunar cycles forever in farming and things like that. In South America, they have the most hardwood trees and they don't cut them down until it's the waning moon, because the waxing in the full moon, there's going to be too much sap. The sap rises and it'll gunk up their equipment. Like they know that. We have statistics on if you do surgery during a full moon, people bleed out more, right? I mean, I think American doctors should take this into consideration. In India, they do, right? But that would be too woo-woo, right? For doctors to use the moon as like when I should do surgery. But it is there. I mean, we plant because of the moon. We plant because of, we know that our world works in conjunction with some of these things, but we don't want to think about the other planets having any effect or the other, aspects of our world. And so it does feel very logical when you really dig in. And a lot of the astrologers that I like were so skeptical that they decided they were going to learn it to actually prove it wrong. And it proved over and over to be true. Now, when we move into human design, it was really a struggle for me when I learned how the conception of it came, because it was a guy that was in Ibiza, this regular guy that had this 8-day, like something took over and downloaded this system. And so I was very skeptical of it at first, but it uses astrology, right? All he did was figure out how to use the Chinese I Ching that's been around for longer than astrology, the Hindu chakra system, the Kabbalah tree of life, the Jewish system, the astrology, and put it into this body graph. And it is amazing how much it can help you understand how you function. And usually, actually, men tend to like human design better because it looks like a circuit board. It acts like a circuit board. Like I can show you how your circuits work. It's very interesting. You have these profiles that are very much archetypal things. You're a 3-5, right? In human design, I pulled your human design. A 3-5 means that you're like the experimenter, your mom, somebody else could have told you like, no, don't go down that path. It's not going to work. And you're like, I'm going to try it, right? Like I have to see for myself, like I am the experimenter. I have to see for myself. I don't care if you show me 50 ways it didn't work. It might work for me. I have to do it, right? It's very much, let me try it for myself and then I'll decide. And then you have the 5 line, which is more subconscious, but it's like the hero, right? Like, oh, I got it. Hand it to me. I got it. I can take it. It's like this very much this person that's always kind of knows that they can handle it, knows that they could take on that extra work or baggage or whatever. Sometimes too much, right? Sometimes it's like, you don't tell a 5 line if you don't want them to be like, well, you should do this. I can help you, right?
Right. So, okay. So can you kind of, cause I know you have my information. Can you kind of like, cause the people that they're listening to this that know me, I want to, cause we talked about this a little bit and I want to just blow everybody's mind the way that my mind is blown. So can you kind of give like just a brief general description of like my what did we say yesterday? I don't know if it's
cross of the
personality
Maya.
or
Yeah,
like all this kind of stuff, man. Like I don't, because like this blows my mind, because like I think it's easy for people to hear this and be like, oh yeah, whatever. But like people that actually know me and hear this, like they're probably gonna be mind blown like I was, because this was crazy to me.
Yeah.
And it's not like, like horoscopes sometimes, I feel like, and people, I think other people feel this, horoscopes sometimes are like very generalized. It can be like, I don't know, whatever. You get an app and you get a horoscope and it's like very general. It can mean a lot of things. But what we talked about yesterday was like very specific.
Yeah. Well, horoscopes make me crazy because what the astrologer is doing is they're putting each of the ascendants on the first house, which is kind of what rules you. And then it's seeing where these big transits will happen in your life. But they say, look at your sun sign. Your sun sign is not in your first house, right? Most of the time, maybe 1 in 12, right?
Mm-hmm.
So most people are not going to resonate with their horoscope because they're looking for their sun sign. And even then, it's very general. There's a lot of different factors. I have a hard time sharing on social media and making these videos. It drives me crazy when I hear these blanket statements about, human design types or astrology suns, or, like Pluto just entered your, you're going to have this crazy ride. And it's like, well, are you fixed? Because a fixed sun person having Pluto over your sun, like I would be like hiding, right? I would be like, oh no, I can't deal with the world right now because it would be so intense for me. But somebody with a fixed sign, they're going to be like, yeah, I don't know. I don't feel that, right? They're like never wanting to change direction. So yeah, it drives me crazy when people make blanket statements. And I think that's one of the issues. Also, I wasn't really into astrology because they say Gemini is like gossipy and chatty and talk about everything and, two-faced and all of these Gemini things that were terrible. And I'm like, that's not who I am. I mean, I have a very Saturn Gemini, so it does ground me. I only speak when I have something interesting to say. But I can see where people think Gemini are two-faced because I can literally have a conversation with one person and see their side 100%. And then I can have a conversation with somebody else and see their side 100%. I have the ability to hold two things true at the same time, right? Okay, so we're going to dive into Cody Jones. So if I was looking at your human design, the first thing we look at is manifesting generators, your type, right? That's your aura type. So generators, they get lit up, something that brings them like, if it lights them up, if it's a yes for them, they can work for 16, 18 hours even, right? When I'm lit up too, I'm a generator type, I can work and work and work. Now, if you look at your human design, if people are pulling it up and they're like, I'm a generator, but I don't have any energy. Well, you burnt yourself out doing a lot of shit you don't want to do. And that's where I was when I found human design. I was like, I'm supposed to be an energizer bunny and I have no energy. Well, I'm doing everything I hate. I was doing accounting at the time. I'm not an accounting, like, why am I doing this, right? So you're this manifesting generator. You have this really strong channel to the throat, which is like the busiest channel in human design. It's like, let's go. I've got an idea. I've got to do it. I've got an idea. I've got to do it. I've got an idea. I'm going to do it. It never stops. But when we look at, so we're looking at your type, we can see how your energy kind of flows. And then we're looking at that profile that we talked about, that the kind of experimenter hero type, like I can do it. I can do it. I can do it. And then you have the cross of the Maya. So just when you were talking, you said your birthday, you were looking for your time. And all I did was glance at a sheet that says, these people born on this day have this cross, right? And that's when we started talking about the cross of the Maya. You having that 32, which is endurance, wanting things to stay like moving in this direction, creating, building, but almost sometimes too far, right? Like trying to make something work when it's done. You have the 54. I'm just naming the parts of the cross, right? You get 4 numbers, 4 gates that make up everybody's cross. So you have that 54 that's aspiring. It's really interesting, the 32 and the 54. Like they struggle with people that are lazy. They struggle that, like if you aren't working hard enough, they're like, come on.
Oh shit.
It's so funny. I just laugh.
I mean, that's that is like 100%, man, because I feel like I have to kind of like bring myself back to reality sometimes if I feel like somebody's not doing enough or working hard enough. That's crazy.
Yeah. Learning this gives you a lot more insight on why you are the way you are. But for me, it really helps me understand other people, because I am kind of like, if you don't like something, fix it. And it would drive me nuts when people in my life would be, like I have a family member that's always sick, right? I was struggling with chronic illness, but I was like doing all the things, right? I was functioning, and she'll just go check herself in the hospital and get worse and worse and worse. And it's like, it's not working, right? It hasn't worked. It's not going to work. But understanding her chart a lot gives me a lot more compassion for people. But yeah, so you're definitely, you struggle with that. I do like you have the 28, which I have. So it does kind of bring you back to more purpose and compassion. You do have that, that little bit of like that thing that grounds you. So you're not just like, it's all about me, go, you do have, I always think it's a balance in the act, right? Like when we have these charts, there's some really good, there's some like hard aspects, and then there's always something that kind of helps us balance out if we utilize it, right? But yeah, you have this ability to ground and like really concentrate and knock things out. I only have half of it, so when I'm around somebody like you, I feel grounded right away. And I worked for 3 hours after I talked to you, like knocking things out. I was like, whoa, I love this energy. I just need to have, Cody get on the phone with me while I, work out some of my projects.
That's amazing.
But yeah, it's like this really grounding force that can help people kind of concentrate when you walk in the room. You do have, and then you have this channel that is always, it's always thinking. It's called the design of the thinker. It can literally drive you to psychosis because it like never stops if you don't find ways to balance it. And like you said, you do, some cold plunging, and I'm sure you do workouts and things like that can kind of help with this kind of mind. Actually, silence can be really good too. I know you probably like music with that creative, but silence can be really good. But this is like, I'm trying to figure out something that has the mystery that's always trying to solve, always trying to understand, always trying to like learn more to figure things out. And then it's like they got the disturbed part that's like just trying to figure something out. And I always see it as this loop. It's very interesting in people that have it because they think everybody's mind thinks like that, and they don't. You're on a hamster wheel. You're always figuring things out. I always tell people to remember that the aha always comes, right? To try to find ways to like distract or calm, because you being on this hamster wheel of like, this is bugging me, I want to figure this out, doesn't actually get you there. It always just comes like, yeah, there it is. And then you move on to the next thing that you're trying to figure out, because that's how your mind works. But you're the cross of the Maya because you're always trying to understand. You're always trying to kind of put together the knowledge, and then you have this ability for the details. And so when you gather these details and you put them together, you can actually really help other people understand what you figured out. And you're always kind of trying to help people understand like through the illusion, right? Instead of like maybe in business, maybe through this podcast, like everything you're doing is helping people understand. Maybe there's another way of understanding things. Maybe there's another way of looking at things. And yeah, it's a really beautiful cross, and you do it through yourself, right? Somebody else might do it in another way, but since you have that 3 line, it's like, I have to try it. I have to understand it for myself, and then I can kind of share about it. So it's really beautiful. And then if we move to astrology, which we could go into human design for like 2 hours, and then we could do astrology. But astrology so I was just glancing, right? And I see that you have your sun, your moon, your midheaven, which is your career. Like they're all like conjoined. Bill Gates, I was like, who has an Aries moon conjoined their midheaven? So I can have an example, right? So Bill Gates has this, how he was obsessively working on, Apple in a garage or whatever for however, like obsessively working, right? All of your energy, your sun, which is kind of like the lens at which we see the world, your moon, your emotional body. And we think about how powerful emotions are, right? If anybody listens to Joe Dispenza or, different coaches that talk about like, you have to feel it. I mean, manifestation or whatever, you have to feel it, right? That feeling matched with an intention is going to get you, where you want to go. So having your moon and your sun and your midheaven, like how do I want to aspire my vocation, things like that, all conjunct. That's like insane energy to work, right? It's insane energy to know and to learn and to work because your midheaven is in your ninth house. So it's like gathering, learning, putting it into place. You have your Mars in Taurus, which the masculine, the force in the 10th house. So what are we going to do? We're going to work, we're going to create, we're going to make money, we're going to materially succeed. Mercury, mind, it's there as well. And then you have a little bit of Gemini, right? You have your Venus in Gemini, so you're attracted to knowledge and learning things. And then you have your North Node in the 11th house, which is why you have this podcast, even though it's maybe not paying the bills right now. And maybe it won't. Like I see you more as an Ed Milet. He makes money with his podcast, but he still has a lot of business ventures going. Because you have so much drive to be an entrepreneur and to always be creating things and always be putting things out there in the world that I don't think you'll ever just do one. But you have
not.
this, you have this this North Node, which is really pointing towards purpose, to share, right? To share, to disperse knowledge, to be curious. I mean, Gemini is two people, right? Let's have a conversation. Let's learn from each other. So Gemini North Node in the 11th house of like sharing all of this information one-on-one, right? Conversations, like it's text. Sometimes astrology makes me laugh so hard, even that I joined the Navy and I have, Mars conjunct my sun opposite Neptune, water, military. I mean, it wasn't in my mind at all. It just happened. And astrologically now I look at it and I'm like, that was crazy. Like,
So this is fascinating to me, man, because, talking about this drive and this like entrepreneurial spirit, I think we might've talked about this when we talked. But when I had a public job at a company, I mean, I could not breathe working at this place, man. Like I could not, like, just the punching the clock and being there for 10 hours. I couldn't do it, dude. I couldn't do it. And like at the time though, I think we might've talked about this at the time. I thought something was wrong with me because there were people around me that were fulfilled with these jobs, happy. It was good, the good money, the good benefits, all that. And I've talked about this before on the podcast, is it made me feel like something was wrong because I was like, man, maybe I should be grateful for this. Like maybe I should just be, just be comfortable here and just be okay with this. It's almost like when you're in that spot, it's almost like you feel greedy because you feel like you want more for yourself. But you were talking about emotions. I 100% believe that. I think emotions are there to tell you something is not right or something is right, depending on what the emotion is. And so I think it's important for us to understand how to use and listen to those emotions. I think a good way to put the way I see emotions, man, is it connects your mind to your body. You know what I mean? Like what you think in your mind. I mean, you get a physiological response just from a lot of the emotions that you have. And I don't know if this is true or not, but they say things like stress and anger or happiness or passion, like affects the body physiologically the same way. Like the body doesn't know the difference if you're mad or whatever. I mean, obviously, if you're stressing your body in a productive way, like exercise, it's making your body stronger. So it's not exactly the same thing. But it's just crazy how emotions, if we can listen to what the emotions are, that they can guide us in the right direction we need to be. So anyway, yeah, I like when I was like in my early 20s, man, it was like people around me didn't really know what I was doing. Like like everybody thought that I think everybody's idea was that I just did not want to have a boss. Like I just wanted to be my own boss, which is not 100% inaccurate. I mean, it's not entirely like untrue, but I wouldn't say that was the biggest motivator behind it. And so anyways, like learning this now, had I maybe known this then, like, okay, this is something that I have, this, whatever you want to call this, whether it's drive or passion or, this emotion, even, like, this is something that you can use to push you in another direction in life. And I think what happens with a lot of people, especially with like people in some sort of creative space, whether it's art or music or whatever, it's easy for family or friends to look at these people and say, look, this is not going to pay the bills. What are you doing? Like, this isn't going to work for you. But I think it's important for those people to listen to that, not to what they're saying, but to listen to what's inside of them saying, this is what you should do. Kind of like in your situation, you were in a spot that it sounds like maybe you were not fulfilled and there was something else you were supposed to be doing. I mean, it's hard to explain like how that feels to somebody that's never been in that spot. But if you understand this about yourself and you understand that you can follow this and pursue this thing, and that maybe it's not immediate, but at some point it will be, and I'm not saying that you'll necessarily make, a ton of money at it, but it's not even really about the money. It's about following the passion that you have. If you can understand like where this comes from, and this is just kind of part of who you are, and it's not wrong to have this, ambition for something different that maybe you've never been in your family or whatever. So anyway, yeah, like listen to all this stuff, man. It kind of like, oh man, had somebody told me this like back then when I thought that I was just kind of being, I wouldn't say greedy because it wasn't really about a money thing, although obviously it has to make money to survive, but it was more about, what would you say? Like a person who like a rebellious type thing. Like that's kind of like, I was like, oh man, maybe I'm just kind of, maybe I'm just like being too rebellious. Maybe I just like want to be my own person and, be free or whatever. I don't know, but if I would have known back then, I think to kind of just capitalize on some of these, I consider them strengths.
Yeah.
This idea, and it's, I think you might've mentioned something about an experimenter, being an experimenter. What I hear is a risk taker with that. because I mean, this stuff's not guaranteed to work, man. And that's the bad thing about like entrepreneurship. You could go in and you could just straight up bust ass and it's still not guaranteed that it's going to work out.
Yeah.
But what I try to tell people is, and I think this brings up your learning, the philosophy about learning is, even if it doesn't work, you have the experience that you can take.
Yeah.
Like you have everything that you learned to get to that point. Like even if you put 15, 20 years into this thing and it fails, you are the person that got to that point. And that is like, that's everything. I mean, that growth that you have, that you are now that person, that can't be taken from you.
It gives you so much. I feel like as humans, we really do want to be seen, like totally, truly seen. But it's kind of hard, right? People are all in their own minds and they're doing their own thing. And so the gift of being the person that gets to see people and really get to highlight like the beauty of their design and their gifts, like it just brings me so much joy. But I don't have a lot of people that truly see me, right? But learning human design and learning astrology, like I'm giving myself the gift of truly seeing myself, of recognizing who I am and what I came here to do, and really pushing myself to live a more fulfilling existence. I remember hearing somebody say, you are the 5 people that you surround yourself with.
Mm-hmm.
And I was looking around and, I was raised in a lot of fear. I had 2 Capricorn parents that just thought we go to work and we are just surviving. My mom, 8 kids, an outhouse till she was 14, like very, kind of dismal. Like I just have to survive. And so, yeah, I'm the only of my 3, I have 2 sisters. my parents didn't graduate from college. Like I graduated from college, I joined the Navy, I went and saw the world. And now I'm doing this very scary thing of being a podcaster and an astrologer and, like an entrepreneur. Nobody in my family is an entrepreneur. So it didn't feel natural to me, but I couldn't not do it. And so I just kept listening to podcasters that were doing what I wanted to do and kind of having that energy that I wanted in my life. And then I had to take the really scary leap of actually doing it. And I don't have the drive that you have. I do have a drive. I have a drive towards knowledge. I have a drive towards I can't do anything if it's not purposeful, right? That's why my business is called Evolving on Purpose. That's why my podcast is. Like my North Node is conjunct my Sun and Mars. Like that is just all of my energy is towards being purposeful in this life and sharing it. I don't have a lot of ways to make money in my chart. Not that I can't, but I had to learn to be trusting that everything is in the 11th house of finding the right people, being in the right places, and trusting that I would have the right kind of help, right, to come along and kind of help me live my purpose. And so I have to trust that. And it doesn't feel natural to me. It doesn't feel easy, but I'm taking that leap. And when I first quit my job, I cried for the first week because I had no idea what I was doing, but I knew that I could not do both. I didn't have the energy for it. I couldn't be creative. I was, doing this really soul-sucking accounting job. And there are some people that have a lot of counting in their chart, and I'm like, good for you. We need you. But it was not for me. And so I really had to take a leap of faith. And I think it's beautiful to be able to work with people and show them, maybe where the leap of faith needs to be taken, or where like maybe working the side job is more, beneficial for them right now. Maybe I would have waited a little bit if I was better at astrology when I took the leap of faith. I didn't know timing like I do. And I have a lot of really uncomfortable transits happening right now. So when we get these Neptune transits, they can put you in a fog, and you're like, it's helping to clear the ego and to surrender and to trust. But it feels very much like I have no idea where I'm going. I'm confused, right? And so that's a really hard place to be when you're creating a business. Right. But I have the tools to understand that I just have to take one step at a time, and the next step appears. And that was something that drove me crazy when I heard it, but it's true. It happens every time. I take one more step, and then it's like, oh, a friend tells me about Cody's podcast, or, like it always happens. I'm always just taking a step, and the next step appears, and I'm having to live a lot of faith. But there's other things, like if I looked at somebody else's chart, that's not where they're at. It's really interesting, even just telling people that they're not wrong, right? What they're feeling is valid. Just like you were saying, we can make ourselves wrong a lot. I always see kind of two things in humans, right? Everybody should be like me. And why am I not like that? I'm wrong. Right. And it's like, no, everybody is so different. And even the evolution, right? 2 years ago, you were still very much in that 10th house. And then you moved over to Gemini about 2 years. And it was maybe a dispersion, right? Like, ooh, there's other things I got to do, right? Timing is everything.
So you made a good point right here. You mentioned right or wrong. I think there's morally right and wrong. You don't hurt people, you don't steal. I think everybody can kind of agree with that. But I think there's also like culturally and societally right or wrong. Like what is right for you might not be right for somebody else, and vice versa. And I mean, you see this even across cultures, like different things, careers, marriages, XYZ, like different things are right for different people. And I think like what this all boils down to is really a sense of like understanding yourself, this self identity, because some of the things we're talking about here, I was very fortunate enough to learn these things. I don't know, for like 4 or 5 years ago, something like that. But when I learned it, I learned a lot of these things through. I don't know if you've ever heard of like the DISC personality profiles. So there's the DISC, and it's basically a 4 quadrants, and you can be in a mix of the two, or mix of two of the four. But it's basically, it tells you your personality, like how you react to people. Like the D's are, they're also color coded. I think the D's are red, the I's are yellow. I think the S is blue, and the C is green or something like that. Anyways, each quadrant represents like the D's are like driven, ambitious, very direct, very blunt. The I's are more like your people person, very influential. They like to be the center of the show. The S's are more like your friendly people that are trying to help out. The C's are the very analytical people. Like I imagine a person like Bill Gates is probably in the C space. Donald Trump is probably in the D space. Oprah Winfrey is a really good example of the I space. The S space is like a Bill Clinton type person. And so anyways, there's these different personality types. And when I learned this, I was like, man, I am there's a large portion of me that is in this D space right here. And so just knowing this helps me communicate with other people, because it's like, okay, well, first of all, this energy is going to come across to different people in different ways. So if I'm not careful with how I say things or how I come across, it's going to be overly assertive to somebody else, or very direct to somebody else. So you have to, especially if you're in a spot where you're leading people or you're managing something, you have to be able to not take away your authenticity, or not be like manipulate people, but you have to understand how you're communicating. So if you're in that space, and if I'm talking to a person who's very analytical, very reserved, I'm going to communicate very differently than I would versus to another person that's like assertive the way I am, because those are two completely different conversations. But it's having that awareness of saying, this is how I come across to other people. And, just because I think this way, or I would do this way, doesn't mean that everybody else is going to do this way. And so you have to have some self-awareness and some compassion for how other people think, because, and I like I said, I was fortunate enough to learn. I don't even know where I learned that from. Probably one of the thousands of YouTube videos I listened to along the way, but somewhere along the way, I heard about that, and I was like, man, this makes a lot of sense. This makes a lot of sense about how I think and how I see things. And, you can't, you have to be aware of how you're reacting to everybody.
Yeah.
And I think when it comes to communication, I think that is probably, when we talk about communication, man, it's so easy to focus on the other person. Like, what does the other person say? How do they react? But unfortunately, a lot of us, we don't really listen or pay attention to how we react, how we come across, which is the bulk of the message, is how it's being received, because of how it's delivered.
Yeah.
But I don't know, man. I think that I think that a lot, and I've said this before on the podcast, I think a lot of problems could be solved, or at the very least alleviated, if we had a lot more self-awareness about ourselves.
I heard a statistic, I can't remember what it was, about the statistics of how many people are actually self-aware, and I was kind of blown away on what they're saying, the percentage of people that are not self-aware. And that's why these kind of sales techniques and different things work so well, because you can utilize, and that's what I was introduced to, that the personality test you were talking about was for sales, because then you could understand who that person was and sell to them, because they're so not self-aware that they don't know that you're even using that. I mean, it can be good if you use it in the right way. It can also be a little manipulative, to know that you can manipulate this person. I always war with that. I'm like such a sensitive person. Like, I'm not, right? I'm very left brain, and I'm logical, and I'm curious, but my sun is opposite Neptune, and I just, I can be in a room with somebody that has a headache, and I get that headache. I can be, if somebody's like that, I used to literally push all the people's pressure points in the office until their headache went away. They thought I was magic or something, because I'd feel it was bothering me that they were uncomfortable. It's like, sensitivity is wonderful, but it's a kind of a struggle sometimes too, to really feel what that person is feeling and understand. but having that understanding of why it happens is very,
Yep.
very helpful. But it's like, how can we use this? I always think like, why is it useful, right? I'm a very useful person. Like if it's not useful, I don't care. The reason I learned astrology is because it's useful. And it's like, you said that you could you didn't want to call yourself greedy, but you kind of felt that, right? That's the shadow of the 32 is greed. But it's there because it's out of fear. Like I need enough. I need to succeed, right? And so if I was working with somebody, it would be like exposing that shadow. Like we can make friends with it. It's not bad that you have this. It's part of who you are. That's the shadow side. That's the lower frequency of it. But the higher frequency of it is, look, you provide, you show other people that they can have more. Like when you bring this on a higher level. And so that's what I'm always doing is coaching mindset, really, because that's all we can do. Even I had a client the other day that she was like, I don't know why my income has just dropped since August of this time or whatever. And I looked. So we have transits, and the South Node is always taking energy away, and the North Node is always pushing energy there. And it moves around the 12 houses, 18 months in each house. It's so that we can make sure that we're well-rounded people and we're always working on different areas of our life. But it was going through her second house of finances. So it's taking money and it's building debt, right? Is that just like, a death sentence for your work? No, but if you know that it's coming, you can maybe cut back on some costs and try to scale back a little bit for that time and see what it's trying to teach you, right? Maybe it's trying to teach you you don't need, so many office things or whatever. You can do more online, or you can cut back in different places. And so, yeah, it's bringing awareness. It's bringing mindset. It's helping you take I have the 12 is my son, and the shadow is vanity, right? It's kind of a tough pill to swallow, right? But it was holding me back from speaking, from sharing, from being seen. Because what if I didn't look perfect? What if I didn't sound perfect? What if? And when you get that blared in your face and you're like, I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing because of vanity, it's like, ooh. So you can really utilize these when you start bringing more awareness, self-awareness. Like how can I work with these things to not only understand and go with the currents of life, right? Instead of, I think we have free will. It's very hard as an astrologer to think you have free will sometimes when you see the things that happen. You're like, do we have free will? Because it is insane sometimes, right? But I do think we have a degree of free will. And so I could be, here's my path, and I could float down the river and it'd take me where I'm supposed to go. Or I could climb out the riverbank and try to hike, through the forest and, work really hard and maybe start to doubt, like, why am I even here? Because I'm so far off course. And so it kind of helps realign and get back on path and understand, like you were saying, there's things that you do that are actually really uncomfortable, but you can't not do it.
Right.
That's being a Leo rising for me. Like I just kind of want to go do my thing, but I have to share, and I have to kind of put myself on a spotlight in some ways. And it feels really uncomfortable. And sometimes it feels like you're doing like, look at me kind of energy with a Leo rising. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. Right. But you have to, because the Leo is such an open-hearted, fiery rising sign. It needs to kind of stand up and share and kind of let people see them, so that they can see that you can, love yourself and be this really inspiring person. Right.
Right. I want to back up for a second, because we were talking about the disc personalities.
Yeah.
And you said something earlier that was like a really good point, which was it can be used to manipulate people. And that's something else I try to tell people too, is like, you need to be aware. Like if you're a person who is just, who doesn't like confrontation, or you're just trying to be peaceful with everybody, or you're just trying to, be productive and whatever it is, you need to be aware of the fact that there may be people out there who might use that against you. And so whatever the identity is for you, wherever you are on this chart or the disc chart or the astrology, I mean, I think what this all boils down to is understanding yourself, understanding who you are, how you come across to other people, where your weaknesses are, where your shadow is, because do you get into shadow work?
That's my favorite way to do shadow work, is that's where I incorporate the gene keys. And because I don't know, who are these people that just sit around and they get triggered and they go within and they figure out what the trigger is and they work through it and then they go about life. I'm like, who has time to get triggered at a basketball game and go within and figure out the trigger?
Yeah.
So I do a lot of like preemptive shadow work by, like I said, the shadow of vanity. I have now I'm blanking on all of my shadows. But I've done a lot of work with them. The gene keys, you can just pull a free profile. And if you buy the book, Richard Rudd's, he worked with Ra, the founder of human design. He worked with him forever. And then he opened a school in the UK. He wrote some human design books. And then he asked if he could do his own thing. And so he did his own thing with his gene keys, where he took every gate, which is based on the I Ching, that's been around for, I don't even know how many thousands of years. It's one of the first personality kind of things. And he contemplated for 7 years and wrote the most beautiful book. And it works with the shadow and the gift and the, kind of the enlightened. And I'm not even trying to get to the enlightenment. I just want to live in the gift of each of my gates a little bit more. And so I work with those a lot, and any of my clients, I kind of share how to do this contemplation to work on the shadow. So, because really everybody is just a mirror. It's really interesting when you start kind of viewing the world as a mirror, and it doesn't bother you if it's not within you. If somebody tells me that I have blue hair and they hate it, it's like, I don't have blue hair, like you don't even care. But if somebody says something that you might feel like there's a shred of truth in there, it feels very uncomfortable, or it's very funny. The things that you really can't stand in somebody else, you usually have a little bit of that in yourself, right?
For sure.
And you can't stand it in yourself, and that's why it bothers you about that other person. Or maybe you are a little judgmental. And so when you're judging people for being lazy, they're just reflecting that to you so it can be seen, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what
That's a really good point, man, because anytime I've ever felt something that was like, I wouldn't say it's completely random, but it's like, what is it about this person that I don't like? Like, why, this person's never really done anything to me or whatever. Like, what is it? There's just something about this person I don't like. And that's 100% the truth, because there's some sort of quality there that I don't like about myself. I think the same is true with jealousy. I think jealousy, by definition, if you're jealous of something, if somebody has something or whatever, it's like, you're not mad that this person has this thing. You're mad that you yourself don't have this thing for whatever reason, whether you don't have the, commitment to the goal, or you don't have the dedication, or whatever it is. That's where the jealousy comes from.
Yeah.
Another big one too, I think a big shadow is arrogance. It's like, I don't know, for me personally, anytime I've ever been arrogant in any situation whatsoever, it's been because of a almost like an insecurity, like a lack of confidence in that area. And so it's like, okay, well, how do you fix that? Well, you just become better in whatever that area is. I mean, I don't know how, but it's like the shadow. It's like everybody has a shadow, everybody has their thing, but it's like, how do you get rid of a shadow? Is you shine light to it. You have to be aware. You have to be aware that it's there and put light on the shadow. And it's like you said, this is, I think there's a quote. I don't know what the quote is exactly, but there's a quote that says something along the lines of like, resistance is the source of all pain. If you try to resist that a thing exists, like this desk is black, and I can sit here all day and be mad about the fact that it's black, but like that's how it is. Like, the desk is black. And so if you resist this thing, man, then that causes a lot of pain. Or you could just learn how to I won't say live with it, because I think it can be improved, but you can improve, I mean, I could paint the desk if I really wanted to, whatever. But like, I'm just saying, man, the shadow, I think, but that goes back to another conversation we've had about the discomfort. It's not easy or comfortable to lean into that part of yourself, or, those things that bother you or whatever it is. But at the same time, man, it's like, what, are you just going to continuously battle with this thing? I mean, I don't know, like these, but I mean, there again, you have to know your starting point. You have to have enough humility and enough sense of self-identity to know where these flaws are to improve these things.
Yeah.
And it's like such a spectrum, man, because one thing that we talked before we started recording here was like patience. I have very little patience for things. And it's like, for me, man, I feel like I'm the type of person, and everything that we talked about right now kind of confirms this, but I'm the type of person, if there's a problem, whether it's with myself, a relationship, a business, or whatever, if there is a problem, I want to solve it immediately. I don't want to put it on the back burner. I don't want to wait. I just immediately, whatever it is. Okay, well, a lot of times there's other people involved, and there's things involved. Like, we have to do this a certain way. Everything can't be right now. I'm learning that. I'm understanding that. But it's like, I don't know, man. I'm not the kind of person to put a problem off and just like hope that it solves itself and disappears type thing. But I guess I don't know. I guess it's finding a balance. But where was I going with that? I was saying that this accountability, I've noticed recently, is something that's really been bothering me. Is like, dude, it's like, because I talked about this on the podcast a lot, is like this victim mentality. It's like everything is somebody else's fault. And it's like, man, that I've talked about it like so much at this point, but it's like that mentality perpetuates itself because that puts off a certain sort of a vibe and energy to people when you blame all of your problems on somebody else, or that you blame everything on, whatever it is that we insert, whatever source of your pain. But it's like, can you ever make an improvement if every single thing is somebody else's fault? And I'm not saying there's not things that are definitely people's fault, but well, I think your reaction to the thing, though, like, is your responsibility. Some, like you said, somebody could not like your hair or whatever, and I mean, that's like their fault. Like, I mean, like, it's your hair. You wear it how you want to wear it. But yeah. I don't know, man. It's but I mean, and I'm not criticizing these people who can't do this. That's actually one of the things I'm trying to do here, is help these people, like, I don't know, overcome or whatever it is that you would say to that. But like, I'm gonna stop there because I'm gonna go down a rabbit hole, man. And it's like, this is your episode. So
I had so I had a family member that I was trying to help all the time. Right? I'm going to make food. I'm going to help make changes. I'm trying to save her from this thing. Right? I changed my diet to try to save her. Right? You can't save people, right? You can't make people. And it would be a constant, like, I was wrong and I was a terrible and everything, I did, and then it would be this crazy, like, calling all the family members and telling them what an awful person I was and all of these things. And it was awful, right? It was so awful. And I was just like, what is going on? But I'm doing this work and I'm realizing that they're a mirror, and I'm realizing that the only thing I can do is change myself. And as soon as I stopped doing the same thing and calling the other family member and be like, what is she crazy? What is she talking about? Right? As soon as I see within myself that the only thing I can do is take care of myself, we have not had an issue in years. And it was a constant but now I understand that when you start understanding people's moons and how their emotions work and how their minds work, I understand that she's so hard on herself already. She doesn't need me trying to give her more feelings of judgment. So when I stop judging and just, how are you? I'm not going to help unless you ask, right? Like, how are you? Oh man, I'm glad you're having a good day. It's all dissipated. I don't have any strife with that family member.
Yeah, that's a really good point, man. Because I think that's I think that's like a source of a lot of confrontation, is like the reaction, like everybody being reactive, the reaction to it. Somebody says something to you and then you react, and next thing you know, there's this cycle. But if you break that cycle, then it breaks the cycle.
Yeah.
Were you the one that said to me, what did you say? Maybe it was somebody else. I don't know the exact quote. You heal through the wound. You heal others through a wound. Something
I
along
didn't
those
say
lines.
that, but I know I know what you're talking about. And actually, we need relationship with other people to heal stuff within ourselves, right? They reflect it to us. They bring it to us to be seen. And so you have to be so thankful for the hard relationships that you have in your life, for the people that continuously bring up hard things. Because I could go off and live in a hut somewhere and say my mantras and have a stress-free life, maybe, right? But we're not here to do that. Maybe some people are, and I appreciate them raising the vibration of the world by praying and raising their vibration, but I'm not. I'm here to be around the regular people and walk this in a very logical left brain. Like, I can give you facts and figures and statistics. I'm not here to just go, sit and pray and live a nice, calm life. It's very uncomfortable at times. But the more I grow, the more I can help others. The more I look at my shadow and the things within me that are not so pretty, I can help other people do it. The more that I can accept myself. That's one thing. It feels kind of weird. I have all of the love gates. And when I came into this world, I would literally crawl, knock kids down and hug them, love on them. I came in like this, the most loving person. And then it gets kind of pushed out of you. You're like, that's weird. And so I have to accept that I'm really here to love perfect strangers, to have a conversation and be open-hearted. I got nothing, no, I can be vulnerable, so you can be vulnerable. I have clients that would say that they're not vulnerable at all, and then you see that they're like this Cancer sun and they've covered it up and they're the most tender-hearted people in the world, and nobody would say that about them. And me being able to reflect that, me being able to be vulnerable and open-hearted helps them kind of remember that about themselves, right? But it's not comfortable.
Yeah. Okay, let's do this. Let's take a break really quick because we're kind of well over. But we're touching on something right here that I want to get back to when we come back from this, which is purpose. Maybe using all this that we know about ourselves, or if somebody works with you or they work with somebody else and figure out their chart and they find out all these things, is finding this sense of purpose. Because this is a very, I don't know of any bigger question in life than what is my purpose here. That is a very large question.
Yeah.
And I think it's a question that a lot of people have, so maybe we'll get back to that here in just a minute, but let's take a break here for just a second.
Sounds good.
Okay. So purpose, like I said, very big question. And so let's just assume that, somebody does this work. They go through a chart reading, or they try to find out about themselves. They do the disc personalities, whatever it is that they find out about themselves. What's your philosophy on this? What are your thoughts on this? Because I feel like there's a lot of things that we've talked to here today about that could be what it just tells you a lot about yourself. So when it comes to finding purpose, assuming that you find a purpose and the purpose doesn't find you, which kind of sounds like a more accurate way to describe it,
Yeah.
Because I don't know. I'm just curious to get your thoughts on that.
The funny thing is, people usually come to an astrologer when it's last ditch effort, what is going on? My life is crumbling, right? So it's usually kind of because you can look at the natal chart and you can kind of see when things will kind of explode in their life. I like to look at Whitney Houston. You could tell when the progress chart was going to focus on career and why some people are so talented and they don't make it, and why some people do, right? And I'm never going to tell somebody they can't do something, right? Because if you have a really strong pull towards something, it's obviously you know who you are. But we can look at timing, and we can look at when things are kind of conspiring for you. But the thing about purpose is not everybody's here. Everybody has a purpose. Everybody has a purpose. But not everybody's here for their job to be their purpose.
Right.
For me, I can't not, right? Everything in my chart is like purpose. And I've been asking myself this question since I was born. Why am I here? I have, like all of these books that I'm like, why am I here? Like always trying to find that answer, right? That's who I am. But somebody else might not even think about it. They're just doing their purpose. I love Cross of Service. It's a really beautiful cross in its shadow, it's the person that's correcting you all the time, because the shadow is judgment, and the shadow is seeing what's wrong. And the shadow is, it's constantly like, why'd you do that? And why'd you do that? Why'd you do that? But if you can get it to that little bit of a higher space, they're so good at seeing what's wrong and having the energy to correct it. They're so good at serving at a higher level. They have these ethics that are so beautiful, right? So kind of getting people to understand that they can feel more fulfilled and live a purposeful life, whether or not it's, written in the stars that that's how they're going to do their job, or if that's just something that if they lean into this a little bit more, they're going to feel happier and more fulfilled and feel like they're living a really good life, right? That's what I want. There's the placebo effect, right? I love the placebo effect. Anytime I'm going to take a supplement, I read all of the reasons that it's going to help me.
Yep.
Why not use the placebo effect? We talked about, astrology and reincarnation the other day, and who cares? I don't care whether I'm right or not. Does it make me feel better? Do I like the viewpoint that I have, that this is a lesson and I'm just learning it, that this is, I like that viewpoint. I live a good life. Why does it matter whether my existence is happier and more fulfilled? Or I could just be like, there's no point. This is terrible, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and this is kind of what I was saying earlier, about these emotions, man, like having this emotion because not everybody is going to have the same pull or emotion or drive towards a thing like you are, or like you or me or somebody else. And like, I think it's just important to listen to that, because that's there for a reason,
Yeah.
Because like you said, I think you've already said, already, that a lot of people, it's not career for them. Like their purpose here is not career, and that's 100%. That's okay. Some people, their purpose is to have I won't say their purpose, but like what fulfills them is to have a happy, healthy family, or a healthy relationship with their pets, or whatever it is. Whatever it is for you, man. But like, I think what the issue is when we try to fit ourselves into these boxes that have been constructed from society or from schools or from, insert whatever institution. And that makes us feel like we have to live up to something that is not for us. I talk a lot about the education system here, and it seems like I am always criticizing it. But if you look at any creative person, entrepreneur, artist, whatever, the structure of the education system is not set up to benefit or be conducive to the careers of those people. It's just not. Like, I think, Steve Jobs and Elon Musk and those kind of people dropped out of college, and it was just like not a thing. But like now they've created, who knows how many thousands, tens of thousands of jobs. But it's like that sort of structure is not okay for everybody. I can't tell you. So I'll be 31 next month. And when I was in high school, it was like the only thing that was pushed was university, college. That was the only thing. Like, if you didn't go to college, you were just going to, not live a good life and be whatever. I won't say a failure, but like not live a good life. But it's like, I remember back in high school, man, there was almost zero talk of trades, like people going to trades. And like, now being an adult, I realize that trades are very important. Like, if you have a plumbing issue, you'll see how important a plumber is to come to your house to fix your plumbing issue, because these things, like, we need these things, and that the people who are in that space, that is a better space for them than college ever was or ever would be, and it's just like, I think a lot of people, especially young people, get discouraged when they're in that system, and it's like the college thing is being pushed so hard, but it's like, if that doesn't work for you, man, if that's not going to fulfill you, if that's going to drain you to be there, then that is a pretty good sign that that's not the path you're supposed to be on,
Yeah.
But I mean, like I said, like in social media, I talk a lot about social media too. It seems like I criticize everything on here, but I promise I don't. But it's like social media, man, makes it seem like things like entrepreneurship and financial success and college and all these things, it's like it glamorizes all these things. First of all, it doesn't show you the bad parts. It doesn't show you the struggle and the hardship and the dedication that it takes to get there. But it shows you like these quote unquote overnight successes that took like 20 years. It shows you these things, and it's like, oh, well, people try to do these things, and if it doesn't work the way they think it should work, then, oh, it's just clearly not meant to be. It's like, no, dude, this is a hard thing to do. Like, this is going to take time and effort and dedication. And if you're comparing yourself to, if you're 18 years old and you're comparing yourself to somebody who's 48 years old and they have several decades of grinding at this thing to get to where they are, and you're comparing yourself to that is not going to work, because you have to see, like, this person is at a place. The reason they're at this place is because of the several decades before that, which a lot of times you don't see. But anyways, it's the comparison thing in this situation. But I'm just saying the structure of the very thing that is supposed to benefit us and increase our education and growth as people and be productive to that. The very structure of that weeds out the people who are most of the people who are the most creative.
Yeah.
Because like most entrepreneurs are not going to go through college. I mean, most of them probably barely finish high school. Like, I was a C student in high school. I was not man, school was just not my thing. Like, I was just there to do my time and just like move on. I was just like, it was not my thing. But it's like how I don't understand. And I mean, you see the same thing with artists and musicians, even though I understand that there's like, college degrees for that kind of stuff. But it's like the best of the creative people just do not do well in a structured environment like that. And then another part of that too is like, you get to corporate America. Corporate America has this hierarchy, and there's this structure, and there's managers, and there's whatever else. But it's like the creative person in that organization can be the one that really saves the company and steers it in another direction. Example I always use: Blockbuster went out of business because they couldn't see the curve that Netflix was bringing to the market. And now they no longer exist because they couldn't get in front of the thing of like, oh, well, this streaming service is coming. Like, this is the future. This is what we need to be pushing towards. They didn't have, if they had maybe that one creative person that stood up and say, hey, what if we invested in this? I don't know. Who knows? Maybe you would have Blockbuster on your, smart TV or whatever. I mean, who knows, but it's just like, it's crazy that the entire structure of this education system just weeds out the very people who start these organizations to begin with, like Apple and Google and whatever else. I mean, I don't know. It's just crazy to me.
I think kids are going to be even more creative than we were ever even allowed to be. I see the future could be very bright with some of the new things that are coming in, because we have generational things in the chart, right? There's these slow moving planets that are generational. And so with Pluto moving into Aquarius, it's a very out of the box way to think. So we're just going to have more and more out of the box thinkers. And that's why I actually go on a lot of mom podcasts and talk about human design and astrology, because I don't see, my voice or, anybody's single voice changing the school system anytime soon. I mean, with Pluto in, it was in Capricorn when we had 2020 and all the different things, and institution, the bank institution, like we've had all of this stuff showing us over and over and over again, the government structure, the medical system, the school system is broken, right? So we went through Pluto showing us all of the things that are wrong. And now it's moved into Aquarius for the next 20 years to kind of, it's like the higher octave, right? They're both ruled by Saturn, but it's the higher octave of let's get creative in a solution. So I think it is going to change. I see it changing. But until it does, I mean, we still have to war with technology, right? It has so many beautiful things, but it has so many shadows as well. But yeah, I always go on these mom podcasts to try to teach moms how to bring out the best in their children. You know, I have one child that's he's the cross of penetration. He focuses. He's out there shooting hoops on his own for 45 minutes. He's setting up cones for his NFL career. He's working, right? He's very driven. I have another son that's very creative, like genius creative. He wants to be like his brother. So he's trying to do all these sports and trying to do things, and he's good. But I try to highlight what he's good at. He wants to be, you know, Mr. Beast or some of these YouTubers, right? So I'm like, go make a YouTube video. You know, he made a really cool reel the other day of him shooting. He did these moves. He put music to it. He shot. I was like, I didn't even know you could do that. He's just turned 11, right? I said, go for it. Make a YouTube channel. And he made one and realized that it's like really hard to gain followers and that it's not so easy and that maybe this isn't. And I talked to him about Mr. Beast and things. Mr. Beast has a really incredible chart. He has all of this like philanthropy. He wants to give things away. Like that's who he is. But he also has like, he said that even before YouTube was a thing, he was obsessed. He stopped talking because all he wanted to do was talk about YouTube and nobody around him cared because it wasn't even a big thing.
Yeah.
And he finally, he just worked on it. So while it looks like Mr. Beast has a good life and he makes all of this money and he gives away all of this stuff, my son thinks it looks so easy. And so I talk about it. It's not. He was obsessed. He was working at it. What do you want to do? You have to put in the time. You have to put in the effort. If that's not what lights you up, cool. Find what it is. Because when you find that thing that lights you up, then you have the energy towards it, right? And that's why I'm such a big proponent for understanding your children, understanding your spouse, understanding yourself, because then you can help be that person that lifts up and shines a light on their purpose and gifts. And I don't show my kids their chart. I don't talk about it. I just, when I hear them do something that I know is a gift, my penetration son, he knows every single thing that went wrong on the field. He might make a good coach one day, right? Because he knows what's wrong and he knows how to fix it. And I always say, wow, that's really good. Make sure your delivery, make sure you don't tell your coach that he's not doing the right things, right? But wow, look at your gift. You can see what's wrong and you know how to correct it. That's really cool. You might be a coach someday. I don't know. I can't wait to see what you do. Keep showing me what you love, right? Yeah.
You mentioned something right there that was really important, I think, which is like when you're pursuing something, pursuing what you feel like is a purpose. Like I tell people too, man, like you have to have something that is going to be pushing you through this thing that you want to do, because motivation is not going to be it. Motivation is going to, like the first time you get tested, the motivation is going to disappear. And the discipline is important, but the discipline will not be there if again, going back to the passion or the emotion, if the passion is not there, if you don't have the passion, you're not going to be disciplined for this thing. But you have to have some sort of something to reference to when this gets hard. You're trying this thing and you're trying to pursue what you think your purpose is. And this doesn't mean that it's going to be easy, but it means that when something comes along to test that, you have to have something to reference back and say, look, this is worth it to me because of XYZ. And if you don't have that, if you can't reference that, if you don't have whatever that thing is, whatever, I think Friedrich Nietzsche said that if you can remember the why, you can bear the how. If you don't remember the why get through the how. If you don't have that, maybe that's not what you're supposed to be doing. And maybe I mean, some friction is there. It's going to be there, and it has to be there for the thing to work. But if you can't find anything to reference to keep you moving, maybe that's a pretty good indication that you're on the wrong path.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's just there's whatever you want to call it. If you want to call it the universe, if you want to call it the God, if you want to call it your higher self, if you want to say some being is there, I personally think there's an omniscient creator that's responsible for all this. So the way I'm going to look at this is that this being, this God, is trying to show me through emotions or whatever it is, or whatever, that this thing is not working for me. But I think the distinction is like understanding whether it's not working for you or whether it's just difficult just because it's going to be difficult to do something meaningful. And I think that's where the trick is. But it's like you have to have something that's going to keep pushing you forward, man. You have to have some sense of purpose or some sense of this is why I'm doing this, to push you forward. Yeah. But you mentioned about, seeing this guy on YouTube, and it's easy to see, the 10,000, 100,000, million followers, whatever it is. It's easy to see that, but like content creation is so, oh my God, dude, it's like first of all, everybody's trying to do it. Everybody's trying to make reels and get on YouTube and I think there's something crazy about like how many YouTube videos are actually uploaded every single hour or something. It is insane. Like how their servers even handle that. I don't know how many servers they have, but how they even handles that. It's something crazy. Like it's a crazy amount, but since everybody's trying to do it, that's already going to make it so much more competitive.
The cool thing is if you really step back and you say, if I'm in my authentic self, if I'm vibrant, we are vibrational beings. We are chemical, we are electrical, we are vibrational beings. If I'm vibrating you can tell when you walk in a room and maybe somebody is peacocking or acting like they are great, but you can feel that they don't really believe that. It's inconsistent.
Yep.
It doesn't feel right? When you walk in and somebody is authentically themselves, it feels good. I mean, even Donald Trump, like, I'm not a fan of him, but he is very authentically himself. I've seen his chart. He's doing what he believes, right? He believes it, right? He's being authentically himself. So people are drawn to that. People are drawn to you vibrating in a consistency with who you really are. That's why I work so hard with human design. Like, let's see who you really are and let's get in alignment with that, because then you will draw the right people. And maybe your crowd is 100 people. And if you have 100 people that are paying you a good amount of money, that's a job. You don't need 100, 1,000, 10,000, whatever.
Right. I think an important thing about that too is like when people are their authentic self, that you can trust that person. If you don't like Donald Trump, but he is authentic, and you say, okay, well, Donald Trump is an asshole, you can always trust that he's going to be an asshole. Like he's never going to steer outside of that.
You know what he's thinking. He's going to tell you.
And that's what I'm saying. And this is why it's so important, I think, for people to be able to voice their opinion and assert their opinion, whatever that is. I'm not, not forcefully or anything, but I'm just saying be themselves, because talked about people pleasing on here a lot too. People pleasing has the opposite effect, because what we think we're doing when we people please is we think we're gaining friends and we're gaining, whatever it is. But actually, man, it's hard to trust a person who's a people pleaser, because you don't know what they're thinking. You don't know what they really want to do, what their thoughts are. You don't know if this person's going to, stab you in the back the first chance they get. Like, you don't know. At least if you can talk to a person and you disagree with the person or whatever the thing is, if they're being authentic, at least that's who they are, and you never have to guess what this person's going to say. But I don't know. I think I've talked to a lot of people here recently that have an issue, being that assertive, asserting themselves and saying what it is that they truly want and believe. And unfortunately, that opens up the door. Not only does it make people not trust you, but that also opens up the door for manipulation, because if there's a person, I hate to even use this word because it's so overused, but if there's a person like a narcissist or somebody like that who's like clearly feeds off of that, that's not going to be a good, like a narcissist is the last person you want to be a people pleaser to. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But yeah, man, it's just like, and that's one thing I value with people that I either work with or, have some sort of relationship with. I love to hear like what a person truly thinks and truly feels and truly wants. And if that person can't do that, then the way I look at it, not saying it's true or not true, but the way I look at it, then maybe it's me. Like maybe this person for some reason feels like they can't share whatever this thing is with me, for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's like that most of the time, but I think if I try to be like, I talk to so many different people about so many different things, man. And I try to hear all sides of every story. And I think, speaking of Donald Trump, I think an issue that we have today is a lot of people, like in politics, we think that we have to, in order to see where a person's coming from, this like from a different belief or whatever. I think that people think we have to adopt that belief, and it's like that's not the case. Like you can just like people are allowed to believe different things. This doesn't necessarily mean you have to change your belief, just because this person believes it. But I think it's what is it? It's a sign of intelligence and confidence to be able to hear a belief that is not yours and empathize with that person because you're grounded in what it is that you believe.
Yeah.
Politics
is a weird thing. It kind of shuts down part of your brain, right? Like they've done studies and I wouldn't have agreed with it until 2020. It really brought things to the head for me, a lot of truth, right? As an astrologer, when we look at 2020, we look at energetics, right? And the energetics was like, we're going to unveil the truth. And for me, I had always been kind of this bleeding heart liberal. I thought, well, what, these conservatives just don't like, gay people or don't like, that's all I could see because that was what was fed to me. And for me, health is my number one, right? The health of my family, the health of my children. And when all of a sudden the world was telling me how to do my health, the blinders got taken off. And all of a sudden I was seeing both sides a lot more clearly. Right. And so it's very interesting when you have these kind of things happen that you even see where your blind spots are. And I'm not saying I have all the answers or I know everything, but I know now what's really important to me. Right.
Right.
And I have to listen to everybody's sides and see,
Well, I think that openness, though, is what is going to help us progress as a civilization, because we can never fight the problem as long as we're fighting each other. You know, I mean,
they've been very smart for a long time, right? Let's pick a couple of issues that we think we can't bend on. Let's make everybody feel so separated and so different. And now I'm like, this is crazy. You guys, if I talk to anybody one-on-one, most people have the same ethical, like they have the same values. But we picked this one little thing.
Yeah, I don't know for sure if this is why this happened. But, during COVID, I think, like you said, the blinders kind of came off for you. But I think one thing that maybe possibly could have happened was when people were at home a lot, they were kind of with their family and with themselves, and they were kind of outside this this network that seems to happen when you're in a certain place of your town or your city or in a certain neighborhood or whatever. And it's like this, we a lot of times we adopt the mentality of those that are around us. But I think what COVID did when people were like, just by themselves really, was it just kind of brought their own thoughts to the forefront. Like, okay, like why am I thinking the way that I think? Like this is something else I talk about too. Like the things that you think or believe, is this even something that you think or believe, or is it something that you think you believe because people around you believe that?
With the consciousness, right? Like they've literally shown that. Well, like even the monkey thing. Have you done the monkey thing where on one side of the island the monkeys were washing their fruit or dunking their sweet potato in salt water and it tasted better, or something, it was cleaner. And all of a sudden, once it hit the tipping point of 100 monkeys doing it, the rest of the monkeys followed suit, even though they'd never seen it. It was like the consciousness of the monkeys was high enough that they all knew how to do it instinctively. The 100th monkey study or something. It's very interesting. But we do. We don't want to think that there's consciousness floating around there, like everywhere, right? We are influenced by what other people think. And in human design, we see like your design, your think, your design. It's a very unique way to think, but it's also very strong. So people walk in the room and they might be like, almost even afraid to tell you what they think if they have I have an open head, right? So I can already feel kind of what you're thinking. And then I'm like, oh, my opinion might be different. Can I say it, right? And then I have this Libra moon that like wants everybody to be comfortable. Like you were saying, nobody trusts a people pleaser. My Libra moon is really having a struggle right now, right? A Libra moon wants harmony. It wants everybody in the room to be okay. Right? Like it just wants to, like I'm a really good host, right? People come, I already know what they need. I know what they want. I know if they're thirsty. I know, like I'm just really instinctively good at that. It has its strong points, but it can be at a detriment to myself. And right now this north node is in Aries and the south node is in Libra. And the transits are like, you can't do this anymore. You cannot do it. And I'll literally find myself so there's always something helping you, right? Even though this is a struggle for me, the outer planets are saying like, you can't do this. If I say something that's not authentically true, just to make somebody else feel better, I feel it in my body right away. It's like, you cannot do this anymore. It's not being allowed anymore. It's just, it blows my mind every day looking at how everything is lining up for us all the time. And we can look at, and when you understand your moon, right? Like that's what I would tell people. Don't just look at your sun, look at your moon. Your moon is what makes you feel emotionally safe. So there are times that I do need to feel emotionally safe. I couldn't live in like a household that people are yelling and things are going on. It would be very uncomfortable. I need a safe space to be myself. But if I lean into that moon and always just try to harmonize and just try to people please, I'm not doing my purpose. And I get a really clear picture of that. And then I can understand why I feel the way I feel. And then I can understand what to do, right? Because a lot of people want to lean on their moons for comfort. If your moon wasn't conjunct your sun in the 9th house, let's say your moon was in the 4th house at home and your sun was in the 9th or the 10th house. And so it was like succeed, but be home, right? If you leaned into your moon that just wanted to be home and comfortable, you wouldn't be doing your purpose, right? Luckily, you have both in the same house, so you don't have an option. It's happening.
So where my moon is currently, I don't know what does that mean? Like
it's just like I'm looking at birth chart, right? So your birth, your moon, and your moon and your sun are right there, right? So you don't have a choice. It's like my emotional well-being and my kind of the sun is like drive, the yang, the masculine force is going in the same direction. That's nice, right? I only get it sometimes. We call it birth, like a solar return. Some birthdays, you get them lined up and like this is going to be a powerful year because I get a little bit of that energy, a little burst of that, right? You natally have it all the time. So you need other things to kind of diversify you a little bit, to force you sometimes. I mean, right now, the North Node is hitting your moon and your sun. This eclipse is giving you more energy towards your business and what you're doing. But in 8 years, 9 years, it's going to be the opposite. You're going to have to think more about other people, right? You're going to have to think more about it's going to disperse that energy a little bit. So you have to grow, right? And when that happens, now I've already told you it's going to happen. You don't have to be so uncomfortable with it. You can be like, oh, this is that lesson that astrologer talked about that I don't have the energy I had for this, right? And I mean, that's why I think people should have astrologers so they can understand. Sometimes we have transits where Saturn goes over our moon or goes over our, if anybody has a sun or moon in Pisces right now, Saturn can make you feel alone, right? 2 years alone. that can feel really uncomfortable. It can be the social butterfly that all of a sudden doesn't want to be around people. Is Saturn doing it to be mean or whatever? No, it's doing it to get you to focus in, to learn structure, to restructure something, right? But it feels very alone. It feels very much like what happened to me, right? Understanding why these things are happening is like the beauty of having these tools. I don't think everybody needs it. Some people are very intuitive and instinctual and can just kind of move through it. Some people, it's a huge deal. I mean, I was in the military, and when I was in college, we had this group of veterans that went on this trip together. We hiked this mountain, and we got to be really close. And one of them was really struggling. And he gave me his chart, but I wasn't that good of an astrologer yet. So I didn't really know. And he ended up taking his own life. And it bothers me to this day. I have his chart and I can see now what he was going through. But I could have been like, please hang on 6 months and it'll feel better. I promise. Right? Do I know if that would have really saved him? I don't know. But it's hard on me knowing that maybe I could have given him a little bit of peace. Right?
Yeah. I guess so. That's tough, man. So what, like when you say like 6 months or 8 or 9 years, like what are you referring to? Like, what is there something in the chart? Like what is this event or whatever?
Yeah. So the astrology chart has your birth date, right? And so that's your natal chart. And then we have the planets never stop moving. So you get this snapshot of kind of the energy that you have, that you carries with you. There's always, there's this thing called like secondary progressions and progressions that show, like I was talking about your sun moving out of Aries into Taurus. You know, you start getting these new influences because we're always evolving, we're always growing, we're never exactly the same. So we have those progressions where we're, as people, evolving, but then we have the outside weather, which I think about, you know, like if you knew it was going to rain, you'd dress differently, or if you knew it was going to snow or whatever. If you knew you were going to have these really hard times in life, you would gear up, right? Maybe learn how to meditate, maybe learn tapping, maybe go to a therapist, maybe. So it's kind of nice to know, but the planets never stop moving. And your birth chart is frozen in time. And so what astrologers do is they watch the planets that keep moving, and some of them are really slow. Like Saturn is 28 and a half years. That's why we call it a Saturn return. When somebody turns 28 and a half, 29, 30, because it's such a slow thing that it goes, and then it goes back down, and then it goes. And so it hits these really critical points over and over. So when somebody hits like 28 and a half or 30, we know they're going to have some sort of shift. That's why people, if they get married really young, sometimes they don't always make it because they turn into almost a new person with the Saturn return. And you have to grow together, not apart, right? And so we know you're going to have this shift at 28 and a half. It's called a Saturn return, where all of a sudden you're kind of an adult, right? It's your first, like, you were kind of going through life and you're like, whoa, this is real, right? Like I'm really an adult. And then Saturn will make these squares and it checks in. And if you're having a really difficult square, maybe you're not living life. Saturn's kind of like the disciplinary. Maybe you're not living life according to your real, authentic truth, right? So it can be really uncomfortable. If you get it and you just feel like things are a little bit harder and slowed down, you're probably on purpose, right? You're probably doing the right things. So we have these check-ins that are always happening. We have slow moving. We have the moon. It moves around really quick. Yesterday when we talked, it was Leo. It was like, you know, I was probably a little bit more like, yesterday. Today it's in Virgo. It's more grounded. It's actually a better day for me to do a podcast. Sometimes I like that really exciting energy to do a podcast so I can be, you know, like really heart-centered and fiery. Sometimes the Virgo is nice because I can get the details, right? Virgo loves details. And so if you really start to track these things, you can find the rhythm of the moon Do I have more my mind on details today? Or is it a better time to go out and talk to people? Is it a better time to go move? It depends on your chart whether or not you're sensitive to these changes or not. Everybody's going to feel when these big things happen. We say the what is it when you turn 40, the midlife crisis is Neptune. Neptune squares itself, and all of a sudden it's really here to be like, are you really doing what you should be doing? And that's when people quit their jobs or, go by they're like, time's running out. Like, what am I doing? These things they have a higher purpose if we don't just like react. Let's not just react to the energy. Let's see how long it's going to last. Maybe let's batten down the hatches for a little bit. Neptune, I mean, people can maybe drink too much sometimes, or they're trying to escape, right? It's like, let's know what's coming. Let's understand why it's there. Saturn moves so slowly that it moves through the different places. So when I was 10 years old, I'm 40 now. When I was 10 years old, Saturn hit my 8th house. 8th house is death, dying, endings. Saturn hit my 8th house. My grandpa died. It was the first time I had to really deal with death. It was 0-degree Saturn. It just hit it. My grandpa died. It was really hard for me. It changed my perspective, right? Now it's hitting my 8th house as an adult, 40 years old. Death and dying of self, right? Of how I used to live. It feels very uncomfortable, but I see it and I understand it. And I'm doing my best to, I always think, like I knew when I went to boot camp that it would suck, right? It was awful. It was awful, but it was 2 months of my life. This is 2 years of my life. It's uncomfortable. Okay. I know it'll end. I know it won't last forever.
Yeah, this is really interesting because I'm sitting here thinking as you're talking, and it's like these little time periods do seem to be significant shifts or changes for a lot of people in their life. Late 20s, 40s. I was just talking to a person who I think she was saying she went through a divorce in her mid 40s because she was in a relationship for like 20 years, and it was one of those things. And so it's like, yeah, this but it seems like this is a shift for a lot of people around these times. I know certainly for me, late 20s, mid 20s to late 20s was a big change, that 3 or 4 year period there. So yes, but it's crazy to understand, like just looking at this and understanding this. I don't want to close this thing out because I could keep talking, but I do have to leave in a couple minutes. Where can people find you? Do you have a website or social media or anything that you want to promote?
Yeah, so anybody can go to my website. It's evolvingonpurpose.org. And so you can look at my website and it will give you the option to have a deep dive reading with me. If you know that you really want to make some changes, I have like an alignment coaching package of three things. I'm not like a long-term coach yet, although I keep having clients that keep booking me for 3 more and 3 more and 3 more because they really like that kind of touch point where they can, they'll see it and they're doing it and then they kind of lose it because they're around all the regular people in life and they like to have that touch point, that reminder of what they're doing and why. And so I might look at doing longer coaching packages, but right now you can do a returning client if you've booked with me before, but that first deep dive is really important to kind of start understanding your chart, and then we can follow up. I have my Instagram I had to put the dots in there, evolving.on.purpose. And then Facebook, I have an Evolving on Purpose page. I do have a podcast called Evolving on Purpose, where I do always introduce the guest with their type, like their human design and their astrology, because it always drives me crazy when I hear something and people are like, oh yeah. And I'm like, you are not like that at all though. Like, I love that you're inspired by these people, but maybe be inspired a little bit, but don't think that you have to your life has to look like that, And so I love kind of opening it up. But if you are like the cross of planning, there's all these planners out there that are just looking for their community. And I'm like, you are the community. You're supposed to be building it, so people like me have a place to come visit and share my knowledge, do your job, and then And like you're sharing this understanding, do your job. If everybody just did their job, man, it would we'd all kind of fit, right?
Yeah, I was thinking about that actually when you were telling the story about the monkeys. Like, can you imagine if everybody just did, like, it doesn't have to be a huge thing. If everybody just did if everybody made some sort of improvement to the world around them, if all 8 billion of us did that, can you just imagine? Like, it's almost kind of hard to comprehend that.
Yeah. It starts with one, though, right? That I always love that Michael Jackson Man in the Mirror, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you improve yourself, everybody around you gets the ripple effect. And that ripple effect can be quite large.
Yep. So one thing that I always ask people before we close out, if you had to pinpoint or share one of the most important lessons you've ever learned, it could be something from your personal life, if you're comfortable sharing it, something from your career, from astrology itself, anything. What do you think if you had to kind of, I know it's really hard to pinpoint one, but maybe one of the most valuable lessons you've ever learned?
Yeah. I mean, it's always kind of hard because I have so many shiny tools and so many, it's like, can you pick one? Or what if people didn't have access to all of the things? And for me, it can be simple, right? Like the story you tell is the life you live. What is the story you're telling yourself? That's like the most simple thing. Do you the victim mentality person, right? It's like, what story are you telling? I always tell people, tell a better story and your life will change.
Yeah, I love that because it's how you see the world determines the world that you see. And
Yeah.
it sounds simple. But like we've already talked about your reaction to things that people might say or do to you. I mean, you I think it's important to understand that, like, this is coming from this person, like this hateful thing or this like spiteful thing they did or whatever, like this is coming from them and it's probably got very little, if anything, to do with you, like, and I don't know. It sounds so cliche and motivational speaky to say that, like, change the world around you and the world around you changes, or change how you see the world and the world around you changes. But that's 100% true, man. That's like, that's completely true. Like, if one thing I talk about a lot on here is like, adversity and things like that. Like, if all you see is problems, the world is going to seem like a terrible battleground that you just simply can't win. But if you see like these challenges, like these things to overcome, I know that's like a very small shift.
Nothing is unfixable, right? You tell yourself every day, nothing is unfixable. All of a sudden your brain wants to solve the problem. You tell yourself, oh, this always happens to me. All of a sudden your brain wants to show you how it always happens to you. The brain works that way. That's science. Like, people have proven there are like 1 million and some inputs every single moment. The brain can't comprehend all of those. It's really smart. It's only comprehending what you tell it to look for.
Exactly. It only what it needs to operate in the world. Like, you can't, we can't look around. I'm sure you could look around a room and like remember every single detail, maybe subconsciously, but you don't need that to operate. You don't, like, you have a very limited focus, and like everything else is very low resolution, but you have this very like you have this focused window that you can actually look at, because that's what you like. That's what your brain needs to comprehend. Like, you don't need to, like, I can look at this computer and I can see a computer. I don't need to see the micro details of like what it's made out of and the chemical composition. I don't need to see all that. Like, all I know is is it
if
working?
If you were a computer guy, though, you would, right? If
I
you
mean, maybe
fix computers, you would know every little thing, and that would be what you saw. What do? You do landscaping. You notice everybody's lawn. You notice, like, these things, right? Yeah, it's fascinating. I always tell people, because in human design, the body makes the choices that take you to your highest good. The body, the yes or no, this expands me, this contracts me, this is good, this is bad, right? That leads you to your highest good. That following the joy, or following, even if you make a decision and then you decide that this is really hard, but you push through it, that's discomfort, but it came from making that decision out of this is good for me, right? This is good for me. I made the decision. There is discomfort. There are hard things. It doesn't always feel great. Manifesting isn't me sitting there going, I want $1 million, right? $1 million feels really good to me. How am I going to get there? Right? $1 million doesn't really matter to me. So it's not going to drive me very far. But somebody else it does, right? But the thing is, the mind is a really good supercomputer. Give it a job, but don't follow it. Because if I followed my mind, I'd still probably work at Wells Fargo if they wouldn't have fired me. And I would, like that was my mind. I couldn't see another way. That was what you had to do. You had to work a 9-to-5 job. That was all I could see. That was all I knew. Safety, my parents, insurance, have insurance. My body knew differently.
Right.
And luckily the universe stepped in and pushed me, right? Which I think it does from time to time. But would you rather hear the knock or get in the car accident and, have to see the world in a whole different way because now you're stuck in your home by yourself and all of a sudden you're having these realizations?
You brought up a good point, man. I don't know if you've ever read the book, The Power of Now by Eckhart. I think it's Eckhart Tolle.
Yeah.
Man, he has a very profound, I had to read this several different times before I actually comprehended it. He has a very profound concept in there, which is the person, basically, I'm paraphrasing, the person that, or the being or whatever it is that does the thinking in your brain and the part of you that is aware of that are like two separate things. And like when I read that, man, I was like, oh my God, that blows my mind. Like, cause that explains the difference between the ego and who you are spiritually, your spirit or your soul or your, higher self or whatever it is you want to call it. Like that, it's like being conscious of your thoughts and understanding that your thoughts, like what you think you are or what you think you feel, like these are not who you are internally. Like this is not the you with the capital Y type thing.
Yeah.
And that just like blew my mind when oh my God, I can't believe we didn't talk about that before now. But that was crazy to me, man, because it's like, okay, because I used to meditate like, I don't know, a couple times a week. And I got to the point where I could do it like 5 to 10 minutes, which doesn't sound like a lot, but for, anybody that meditates, they know that's a pretty good thing. But I always felt like I was supposed to like not have thoughts when I did it. Like if I had a thought coming out, I was like, oh, damn it. Now I got to restart. But somebody told me a couple months ago, they was like, no, you have the thoughts, just let it pass through and just kind of, do your thing. But I was like, man, that is crazy to just be aware of the fact that like the thoughts and the being or the person, the part of you that is aware of that are two separate things. And you can like step back and witness yourself thing. It's crazy, man.
Yeah.
This is one of those things like to me where it's like my brain, I just feel like is not I just cannot comprehend. This is one of those things I can't comprehend. Like I can talk about it and I can kind of understand it, but fully understanding it just blows my mind.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And your brain is always going to be like, I've got to figure out the details and I got to read this and I've got to learn this and I'm going to understand it. But at some point you have to know that like the mysteries are what make the world beautiful too. Like sometimes you just watch The Magician and you don't have to know how he did it, right?
Yeah. I guess that's a good point. Cause yeah. I do have that because I don't really watch a whole lot of TV, man. But like, I noticed when I do watch a movie or something, I'm like, I wonder when they were filming this, like, how did that happen? Like, what? Like, I'm like, I just can't sit there and watch the damn movie.
I have the same mind. I really struggle. I do watch some like reality TV just because I'm such a junkie for psychology. And I look up people's like Nick Viall. He was a bachelor. I look up his chart and he has North Node conjunct Venus. Relationship literally brings him to his highest purpose. And I'm just like mind blown. Yeah. Like I love that, like getting people's stories. But yeah, if I watch a movie, my brain does the same thing. I'm like, were they really comfortable during that? How did they do?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I analyze too, which I guess in some areas that's really helped me. In some areas, this you almost have to. I think you mentioned this earlier. You almost have to force yourself to not, That's why sometimes, man, if I've had a really busy day or a busy week or whatever, I'll just like, if I'm driving, 30-minute drive or whatever, I'll just like turn the phone off, turn the radio off, just kind of like just
Silence.
be there, like just
Silence is like
exist
a
for me.
salve, yeah, for your brain. Not everybody likes silence, but it's good. It's healthy.
Yeah. So, but listen, man, this has been a great conversation. I appreciate you coming on here and sharing all this information with me. I feel like I got to look into this, and that might be the detailed part of my brain. But now I feel like I have to go and analyze every single thing that we, like every single part of this chart. I feel like I got to look at and pick apart. But I don't know. Maybe I'll just try something new. Maybe I'll just try to like just understand it and just let it exist. Maybe I won't
Yeah.
go and pick it apart and try to
Yeah.
figure out what this little thing means. Maybe I'll just like take the information and just be, content with it. That'll be an area for growth.
Yeah. Just follow. I guess I would just follow it if you're interested. You can always just reach out to me. I love teaching. I can we can have fun for an hour, and I can show you some things, and you can decide, ooh, I want to know more. This could really help me in business. Maybe sometimes I look up for people's businesses, like their employees chart, so they can better understand their employees. Like there might be something there for you, maybe not, but yeah.
Well, I think, and I appreciate what you're doing too, because I think one of the things, there's a lot of talk about understanding why things happen to us and understanding the world around us and understanding our childhood and our parents and this kind of thing. But there seems to be not really a lot of talk about understanding ourselves. And I think that's where it all starts. At the very least, that's the only thing we can control. I mean, understanding, like you can work through every single problem of the outside world, but it's like, what can you really do about it? If you can at least understand yourself and improve the things that need to be improved there. I just think that's a good starting point, I think, for a lot of us. And it seems like that's the kind of what you're helping people. At least that's the experience I've had here. And that might be my analytical brain. I don't know. It's just that self-awareness, that self-identity, just understanding the importance of that and just seeing that there is a connection. Cause I think you were talking earlier about the planets and a very simple example of that is sunlight. Sunlight affects our body. Especially like early morning sunlight, and sunlight hits your skin. It generates vitamin D. I mean, I think I don't know if this is a theory or if this is proven science, but I'm pretty sure UV light is like a natural antibiotic. So
they use it at the dentist, right? They put UV, light. I mean, you could go down a rabbit hole. I love health and wellness and anything to make. I guess that I am such a sensitive human being that I'm always trying to like optimize everything so I can feel better in my environment. But light is such an interesting thing, like, going to a sauna that gives you the different spectrums of light, or, utilizing red light or blue light or these different light. Like it's mind blowing how much they can affect our body and how it functions. And sunlight, early sunlight, evening. We used to live on the land. We used to put our bare feet on the land, and that was a grounding, the Schumann residence. We used to, our bodies were not covered completely, and we'd have the red light in the morning and in the evening. Even just sun gazing does something to the brain. I mean, I use a red light because it's cold here sometimes, and I don't like to.
Oh man, red light. The gym I go to has a red light, it's like a tanning bed, but it doesn't tan you. There's no UV light, but it's a red light bed. And man, that thing is incredible. I just started using it a couple weeks ago, but I noticed every time I use it, the next day my skin is it's like crystal clear. It's like very clear and just looks like smooth. Red light's actually a new thing for me. I've been doing the cold plunging, I've been doing the sunlight and that kind of thing, but it's just amazing that like the environment around us influences our body internally, and it's like, it just makes sense that there's got to be some connection with the planets that are outside of our own, with, the star, this in our, whatever, and the moon and all this, like the moon changes the tides and all this kind of stuff. Like there's got to be it just makes sense that there's a connection, because I don't know, there might have been studies on the moon, like moonlight. I don't know, but I know that sunlight is UV light, and the early morning sunlight, which is like not as bright as far as the UV goes, but it's still the light. I know when the sunlight is like really low in the sky, it affects you differently than like if it's really, really hot in the sky.
Yeah.
But yeah, these things affect our body. Like there's physiological changes. It sets your circadian rhythms, and it's like I said, the vitamin D and the the energy and the healing and all this kind of stuff. I mean, they're like this is it's science, so there's connections there. So
yeah.
But listen, man, I definitely appreciate your time. Hang out for just a second. I'm gonna explain to you about the upload process. But I do appreciate your wisdom and sharing everything with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Hey everybody, listen, I really appreciate you guys tuning in today, man. If you like the content, if you found this episode useful, you can visit us on social media. That's YouTube, TikTok, Spotify, Amazon Music, Rumble, Instagram, Facebook, and Google and Apple Podcasts. There you can like our videos, follow, subscribe, and share. And again, we appreciate it. We'll see you next time.